I'm Gene Grant here at the table with this week's Line Opinion panelists. Some Albuquerque City Councilors are expressing concerns about a contract between the city and Scott Greenwood. He's that Cincinnati-based attorney who represented the city in negotiations with the Department of Justice on that agreement on reforms at APD. There's a proposal to add $280,000 to his contract for a total of $500,000 so far. Emphasis on so far. Councilor Ray Garduno told the Albuquerque Journal, quote, "I think this contract is out of control," end quote. And Dennis, concerns about Mr. Greenwood's expenses and his contract were raised months ago. Well, you know what I mean? This has not been a new issue, certainly. What do you think is at the crux of this? Is this man just simply overpaid? Or is it a value proposition? What's going on here?
I think most people feel this guy's overpaid.
Okay.
Now, we don't know exactly what he's been doing, but anytime you start getting up into a figure like that, it just starts shocking people. Yeah. What, $500,000? He's sitting in a room chatting with people from DOJ negotiating. Mm-hmm. Now, I realize lawyers charge a lot.
Yeah, I don't charge those kind of hours.
No, okay, right, but for most people, no one makes that kind of money, and no one makes that kind of hourly rate. And I think that's what's got people angry.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to be much outside of Ray. There's some other minor grumbling, but I think Dennis is quite onto something here. That's a lot of zeros, for Albuquerque, for some.
Well, and the thing is, there are attorneys in Albuquerque who are here who do bill those kinds of hours. It's a very specialized area that they work in, and it, I'm sure that's a very, that's a normal rate for where he's from. But I think what sticks in my craw is that there are other competent attorneys. Yes, he's negotiated before for other cities, but he doesn't know Albuquerque, and he doesn't know the players here.
Right.
And they could have hired somebody locally where the fees would actually go back to that local community and that local firm. And for it to be going to an out-of-state guy who's also, there was this issue with him billing on, for other things, gift shop receipts and alcohol and this kind of thing. We're not bringing him out here for a junket. This is, real work, and it's very frustrating to see this.
Yeah, interesting. Your sense of this, Joey, when you see this, what comes to mind when you see this?
I think what stands out is that his contract with the city was sole source in the first place, just like the Taser contract, and there's a lot of questions about his association with Taser, which he's not being upfront with the city or the public about. He said on this program that people aren't entitled to our clients, and I think that means he's not entitled to my tax dollars.
There you go. That was right here at this table with our colleague Gwyneth Dolan interviewing him at this table and mentioning that, as a matter of fact. Merritt, this is really about also another issue, is extending the contract. So it seems to me if there's heartburn about what he's been paid to for the work up to this point, how does this affect the negotiations for furthering the contract?
Well, certainly. I think let's look at are the results going to improve the city and APD? So I would be cautious on stopping the momentum because we need this to continue. That said, absolutely. I'm a contractor who bills government people, and I do not bill alcohol, and I do not bill gift shops. That's not okay.
Is that a red flag in your view when you see things like that?
It is, and I also think, to Laura's point, why we might want somebody from outside the area to be absolutely neutral and unbiased. I think teaming with an Albuquerque firm or a group of firms to get that local piece, I think that might be an interesting way to look at the contract renegotiation, is keep the momentum, keep the familiarity, but let's reach back to some Albuquerque firms for local expertise.
Sure, absolutely. Dennis, I got to wonder out loud if this is an issue of, this is the administration's guy, basically Mr. Greenwood.
Sure.
And the council is at a real friction point on this whole thing with the administration. If it was their guy, would it be as much heartburn in your view if this is somebody?
No.
Okay.
But one other thing I think people are asking, this guy negotiated with the DOJ. Why do we still need him? The agreement's in place. They signed it. Why is this guy still there? I don't know. Maybe there are ongoing things, but I think that's another reason. Okay, so he was a negotiator, but isn't he done? When does he finish?
Right.
I think you gotta start. The public has to have some parameters as to when this may end.
Does that mean a cap in your view as well?
No, I wouldn't cap it. But,
Yeah.
but I would certainly. It appears to be an open-ended contract. Okay, you can work. Is he going to 10 years? Is he still going to be here?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I think
Please.
it's really important what you just brought up. When do we declare an end to the crisis at APD? When are we out of crisis operations and back, okay, this is how we're moving forward? And I think that's a really important point you just made.
Nice pick up there. Laura, could you pick up on that as well? That's an interesting point. I think the public would have a reasonable expectation to think it would end
Sure.
at some point.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the expectation. And I agree. There should be some, I mean, there should have already been a discussion about the term of this particular contract. The idea that he's sort of just hanging on and it's not entirely clear what he's doing to the public, I don't know what the council has privy to, but I like Merritt's idea of trying to team up with a local firm, maybe to transition some of the issues or whatever, but really there's a lot more benefit to using a local firm, and there's certainly more than enough expertise
What would
out
some of those
there.
benefits entail, in your view, that would be different from Mr. Greenwood?
Well, I mean, for one, when you pay a local firm, those dollars stay in the community. I mean, you're talking about people who have employees, they're paying taxes, they're spending their money in Albuquerque. We're not talking about somebody who's, collecting a fee and only traveling here on our dime and going back and spending their money and filing their taxes in a different state.
Right.
I mean, so there's sort of these waves of economic development of sorts, small scale, that come from paying somebody locally. That's why when I was at the New Mexico Green Chamber of Commerce, one of the biggest things that we did is always focus on local, not just local goods, but local services. It's really important to support the local economy. And I think, large governments like the city of Albuquerque have the opportunity to do that. And you do that by, creating an RFP, by trying to solicit other, other people to provide services, not just this sole source situation.
Looking back on it, in the politics of the time, the stress of the time, everything that was in the air at the time, was there really room in their heads to think in that regard at the time? Or was he just a quick fix
Well, I think
that walked
that
in
was
and the timing was perfect?
I think that was a big part of it, is that he
Okay.
was, for the crisis situation that they had at that time,
Yeah.
there were probably very few people around the country who had that kind of experience and had a record of a positive experience that had come out of it with the DOJ
Sure.
negotiations.
Sure.
But that's behind us now. I mean, I do agree with, he was the negotiator, and that's fine. There should be some, end to this in sight, and I don't see that that's happening.
You would think it'd be like an internal mechanism or somebody inside that could bridge these things as opposed to an outside consultant at this point, now that we've turned this corner. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but what do you think of that one?
Yeah, you would think so. I guess, getting back to what you were saying, I understand the way he came here was through a recommendation from Terry Cole of the Chamber of Commerce. And I would hope there would be at least a few other interests that would be involved in getting somebody like that.
Going back to you said about sole source, just we've got about 30 seconds here. I've heard this from others as well, that maybe we needed to back up just a little bit and to consider who's out there with some kind of expertise locally. Are there any political ramifications for these kind of things in your view, looking down the road for anybody with these kind of hires? Because it's the administration's person, but,
I guess you would think so, maybe for the administration,
Yeah.
since it was their call.
Yeah. Dennis, you have a thought on that? Anything
Yeah,
politically?
no ramifications at all. Public still supports Barry. They still support the police department,
Yeah.
and in a big way. No, the answer is no.
This is an interesting one. We'll have to see how this plays out. $500,000 could be well in, could be not. We'll have to see how this all plays out. Now, up next, if you care about local food, you'll want to hear what chef and author Dan Barber says you should have on your plate.